I do have to tell this story. So, came across my Facebook, a post. I'm gonna be real. I'm gonna be honest. It was a white woman, and I was like, "Yeah, I want to hear that. Like, whatever." And I looked at some of the comments from friends of mine, black women, and I was like, I was like this or what she said, and I was like, "Oh, damn! Now I gotta watch it." So I start watching it, and I'm like, "Oh, hell's bells!" I pause it, share it with Misty, text Misty, "You have to stop what you're doing and watch this." So finish watching it, saying everything that black women have been saying forever. So then I text my friend, message my friend, "Hey, do you know this person of this video that you shared, crossing fingers, toes, hearts?" She's like, "No." And I was like, that was not the right response. And I was like, okay, secret agent. I stalk her and I see her little, the little Facebook icon, and I look and I'm like, "Oh, that's not her. Those are brown babies." And I was like, "Okay, well, it must be her because it says Heather Anderson." So I click on it, sure enough, and I'm like, so I send her a messenger, right? And it starts off with, "No, you don't know me." And I just kind of tell her about Misty
But
and
I'm your
I.
stalker. Hello.
It's like, but I'm a new stalker because it's only been like 10 minutes. So um so I just tell her who we are and what we do and what we're about. And I'm like, "Would you be interested in speaking with us about this show?" And then I realized it's literally like 9 o'clock on a Sunday morning, and I was like, "Oops."
But, I
But
mean,
then
it speaks to how important it was, right?
and she responded, and I was like, "Oh." And she's like, "Oh my gosh," and she's like, something to the effect of, "I'm glad you thought my words were important, yada yada." So we just start talking, we email, Missy and I do our little pre-interview, and boom shaka,
Amaze, amaze.
here we
And
are.
one of the big bright moments about this whole Axis of Allies series for us was about bringing different voices into the conversation, different voices of people who have skin in the game, and not just this skin in general. But we were having a little bit of difficulty finding a person of less color who was interested in being a part of all of this because, it's a little bit scary, whatever, I got my earrings, it's a little bit scary. But Heather was like, "I'm in." And
Yeah.
it was easy. And you know why? Because she is in this challenge that we're all in. She is in and she is ready to bring it.
Yep.
So I want to bring her on right now
Bring
because
it.
I we can't keep her in the waiting room forever. That's so
Nope.
rude. No, rude. So she's coming in now. And here she is. Hello, this is Heather Anderson, our new friend that did not get afraid, be scared away when we stalked her. So she stands in her truth and it's alignment, right? Here we are. We're having this conversation. And Heather, thank you for being here with us.
I'm so honored. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. So, would you mind just telling us a little bit about you? I mean, I know you're from Minneapolis and you've got quite the story, and people in Minneapolis might know you a little bit.
Some of them might, yes. So, yeah, so my husband and I are parents of Black children. And we started our journey in life being raised as really conservative Christians who had zero understanding about race. And I would venture to say, held an incredible amount of bias within our belief system and within ourselves. And I always tell people that our children joined our family and wrecked our lives in the most beautiful way possible.
That's
Yeah,
amazing.
yeah. So,
So, when you say that, when you say
True
that
to
they
form.
wrecked your lives in a good way. Well, first, let me roll that back for a second. So you mentioned bias and grew up in the Midwest, you're still there, right? And when you talk about that bias, one, just describe it a little if you don't mind. And then two, what is it in you and your husband that made it readily, I'm going to make up a word, overcomable, made it surmountable?
You know, I mean, when I'm talking about bias, I think I was raised in a religion that held incredible amounts of racism within the structure of it. American Christianity and really conservative Christianity is literally had its roots in slavery in America. And a lot of American Christians aren't aware of that because we don't have a shared view of history. And so I think for me, what really helped us undo was that we just got really good at being uncomfortable. We got really good at being elastic, and we were really intentional about inviting the truth from people of color into our lives. And one of the things that my husband and I would say often in the very first Black friendships that we made, we would say, if we're making a mistake, if we do something that is hurtful, if there's something that we need to change, you can tell us and you won't risk our relationship. If whatever we need to work through, however uncomfortable it makes us, we'll take care of that. But we want to know. We want you to feel as comfortable coming in and out of our home. We want to know if there's something that we're doing that you see that a Black parent would see, right? And P.S., that has happened to us many, many times. Many times, still does. This idea that we could be existing in this society, that we could all function and breathe this air, and that I could have come through all of that without internalizing anything is ludicrous.
And I don't mean to make you sound like a unicorn.
Okay.
However, there are people who never learn this lesson. There are people who never develop the clarity to be able to look within and say, I am carrying this baggage from my parents and my birth and probably some jacked up DNA and RNA through the years. I still want to know. And, it's not just you either. You have a partner. Like, you guys are in sync here. What was it that made you wake up one day and say, here I am. I want to grow. I want to be better. I want to expand my horizons more as a person who really doesn't have to. I am white in the Midwest. I've got my religion and my friends here. I don't have to go beyond. What took you there?
Seeing the reality of my kids. I mean, everything that I was taught that was true ended every time I walked out the door with my children. Every time. I had been an elementary school teacher. I had been a nanny. I was forever praised for my ability to move through the world with children. People often stopped me in the store and said, you are so good with kids. It's what I was known for. And when I walked through the grocery store with 2 Black children, that was not my experience anymore at all. People grabbed them. People yelled at them. People asked me if I was their grandma. People growled at them, snarled at them, didn't give them a half a second. So, I mean, for all of the white people who would say that racism is over and it's not real, it's just because they don't have proximity, or their proximity is so worried about their own feelings, that they're right. So like, people do that all the time. Everybody has a Black friend who says racism isn't real. And I'm like, well, they're just not your friend. You have power and dominance in some way. But
right. Or
But
you're
they
Candace
say things when
Owens.
you either they say things when you leave the room or they're internalizing some stuff.
Yeah. So what was that like, bringing your kids into the story here? What was it like, just being a nice white lady one day, and then you've got your babies and they're in the little stroller, and you know how people are. Everyone wants to look at the baby, and then they look in, and not only do they see one baby, but they see two, and they see two very brown babies. How did they manage that? I mean, did they like start to back up? Like, I would like to know what your experience is, because Nikki and I both have biracial children, and well, you know what the tale is. People look at them, they're choking, they're clutching their pearls, they're tripping over themselves in the pineapple aisle. Like, there's stuff happening here.
And disclaimer, our biracial babies are like 5 shades lighter than your brown babies.
Yeah. And it's
Like,
still
I mean, they're very fair skinned.
Yeah.
So that's a whole other, are those your babies? Besides the fact that they're face stealers.
Yeah, our kids do look exactly like this. That's another story for another day. That's another show.
I mean, we had everything from, oh, they're going to have a great life because you're going to raise them right, which is, anyway, to asking very, very personal questions in front of them about their first family, to asking if they could touch. I mean, one time my daughter and I were in the mall, and I will never forget this. A white woman just literally walked up, and without even saying hello to her or greeting her, just started touching her hair and petting it.
No.
And that happened to us all the time. And so I think white people felt a special privilege. I mean, I just remember they were itty bitty babies and we were in the airport, and a woman came up to me and said, "I've never touched a Black person before. Can I touch her?" Yeah.
We need to
So, I mean,
pause
lots
for a
and lots
moment. We need a commercial break here, because I don't really know how I would process that.
And the thing, I think that's part of the pain point for me, though, is I really sucked at that at first. I really worked overtime to make sure white people were comfortable around my Black children. And that is something I'm not proud of, but it's also, I mean, again, when we talk about bias and understanding and learning, one of the biases that I had was that I was always going to be nice and good, and that everybody was always going to see me as nice and good. And so, I really had to work on not being good or being liked. And so I'm not proud of how I handled all those interactions. I'm not.
Well, I mean, it's part of your
Heather,
growth too, right? I mean, you're
really
learning.
quick. We have a question.
Okay.
Someone is asking if you feel comfortable, how old your kids are.
They are 12. I have twins.
Oh, she has Twinkies. Twins. She has 2 in a pack.
Yeah.
And they're beautiful.
They're beautiful. They are pre-teeny, and they are eating a lot of food right now. A lot of food.
A lot of food. Oh, just wait till your shoe budget really kicks in. And you probably just started. But like, when you're buying the shoes every 6 weeks.
4 boys.
Well, she's got a lot going on there. She's gonna have to start a farm, I think, for those kids. Yeah. But Coach Robin says, "Ooh, don't touch my hair." 100%. And we as adults still get it, and calling people out on it is, something that we do comfortably, because it's just like when someone kicks you in the shins, you call somebody out on it. But it still never feels good to even be in that position to have to do it. How do your kids manage?
They have learned, I think, when we moved to the city and they were in classes with kids that looked like them, and our whole world became people that look like them. And I would say most of the time when we're with friends now, Heath and I are the only white people in the room, right? Which is amazing because, but it's also hilarious because I have a neighbor who watches us and he always says that. Like everybody was like, oh, they're moving in and their kids are so cute. But now that they have a yard full of Black people all the time, maybe I have to get my mail 11 times and mow my yard one strip at a time.
It's amazing how much more intense the lawn care gets when there's, more than 2 Black people in a group. It becomes a gang.
Yeah.
We say this every week. But you told us in our pre-interview a great story about you and your husband and your move and how you ended up in the city. And I would really love it if you'd share that story.
So we were living in the suburbs and we were looking at lake homes, and it was late at night, and I read a post, a blogish article thing by an adult adoptee, and he talked about living in racial isolation and how painful that was for him. And I literally woke my husband up and I was like, yeah, we're not doing the lake house thing. It was like I had this moment. And again, I do think like when you're examining biases, it's like, I didn't know that I had that bias. I didn't know that I wasn't seeing their school the way that I needed to be seeing it. But when someone showed me, then I was like, oh my gosh. And so, yeah, so we called the realtor and I was like, we're moving to the city. We gridded out the schools on a map and we chose schools with teachers of color, and we chose certain racial demographics that had to be higher than 40% or we wouldn't consider it. And then we toured all the schools, and then we had to talk about good schools with our realtor openly and honestly, like, I will tell you what the good schools are. I'm good on that. And then we found this amazing elementary school that was a global majority school. And I said, don't show me anything that I can't look at inside of this. And again, like, you don't know what you don't know. When my children walked into that school and moved throughout that building, like, everything about the way that they started to move through the world began to shift and to change and to be different.
Aww.
Yeah, everything. We were driving to the city for church and all of that kind of stuff, but it was not the same as living
right
with people that look like you.
Really
I have a
cool.
question about, so now you, the nice white lady, you bring all the Black people. You bring
Wait,
all the
what?
Black people.
Yeah.
And so what is that like? Because that's a thing that I ask people in my little interview when people are like, oh, I'm ready to be woke. And I'm like, so have you spent a lot of time being the minority in a Black majority? And what is that like? Because you've actually experienced the two based on your conversation. So what is that like?
At first you make a lot of mistakes. I mean, I cringe at some of the things I did and said in those early years. I think the idea that you're going to enter into intimate relationships with people who have an entirely different life experience and that you're not going to mess up is probably one of the biggest inhibitors for white people actually doing the things that matter. And it was, I mean, I'll just be honest. There were times when we were in spaces and in places where like, I was like, oh, I'm having thoughts of bias. I'm examining like there was bias in how I thought this group of people like parented. I mean, it's shaming to work through when you are going through these phases and you're like, but I think that's part of what does the real work is those real life relationships, and then coming home and then reading 10 blog posts about it and being like, oh yeah, that's a thing that I just did.
Yeah, no, I mean, because I've always felt like that was an interesting perspective, because I, in essence, did the reverse of what you did, because it's from a different perspective, right? I brought my brown babies to a lily white suburb. I moved from the city proper, and a lot of it had to do with they were in private school, and it was just expensive, and it was just me. And so we moved to a western suburb of Chicago. And although predominantly white, the school that they started off in, the elementary school, was really mixed. And really mixed. Okay. So it was maybe like all in, like it was probably like 12 to 15% brown babies, not all Black, but definitely like, wow, that's a brown kid. That kid is not white. Where there were other schools in our district that were all in, everybody, 6%. And so I was like, ooh. And my kids are biracial, so they are technically half white, but it was still, what is that experience? And for me, coming from Chicago, and having one kid that's accelerated and having one kid that had a cognitive disconnect with reading, I was like, I'm never going to get them in the same freaking school unless I'm in the boundary or I pay for it. And that was the decision that I made. And so I, in a sense, I made the reverse decision of you in choosing, how can I best educate my children, knowing that because their father, their bio dad, is in the city, they have this other cultural experience it on a regular basis, and half their family is Black, so they weren't going to escape it. But I literally, I in essence made the opposite choice of you. And so I found it very,
But your kids can come home and they can ask you things that they need to know and internalize. That I did not have that. Right. And I wanted them to have that. I mean, my children have college age Black friends, right? So like I wanted our two favorite sitters are young Somali girls who graduated from college, and right. So like, but I couldn't give them that on my own. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's definitely, yeah. And that, it's just an interesting thing, because at the base of what we're talking about is where will our kids prosper the best? And depending on where you are, you have to make that choice based on so many, it's still momming.
I just think it takes so much work to make a Black child feel seen and heard and loved in this country.
And safe
that, and by the way, you can almost never do all of those things. That I think I have friends that live in the suburbs. I think it's an impossible set of choices that you make for yourself, and you hope that you're building them up in other places.
Right.
I don't always know that my kids are getting the best quality education. We may have to have a tutor down the road, right? I mean, I may have to supplement the education. So yeah, there is no place for Black children to be children, like just free children. And so you just make what you hope are the best choices.
Yeah.
And there will always be trade-offs, and there will always be trade-offs. And the trade-offs that we made felt like the best for our family, but they're not for everyone.
For sure.
I think it's, go ahead, Misty, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, my parents moved from wherever they were before, I have no idea. But moved to the suburb I grew up in at a time when they weren't selling homes to Black families. And they, the realtor was like, oh, you don't want to live on that street. You want to live on this street. And as my parents drove up and down the road, it's a street away. But they could see, because they're not stupid, that this is what they were doing. They were putting enough Black families into this particular corner of the neighborhood and being able to call it diversified. And, that's crap. And I'm getting a little older. I'm 46. Like, this stuff still happens. And so, this is one of the really important parts of this conversation is, for those of you listening who may have thought Nikki and I are a little bit crazy, but you tune in from my earrings, we're not making this up.
Nope.
This
not
is
even a bit of
a real thing. And I want to share this question that Allie had.
Oh, perfect.
It's a great question. Heather, Allie is wondering if you felt welcomed Or were people suspicious of your motives? And I'm
Mhm.
assuming this is when you adopted your babies, and then moving forward, even moving into this neighborhood. What was that
When you had all the black
like?
people come.
Yes,
I
all
just
the,
love
you know,
that. I
and
just
the
love
neighborhood
that.
with like multiple lawnmowers. Everyone was out at the same time looking at you.
You know, so not every Black person is accepting when we walk
Of
into
course,
the
yes.
right. And that also was my own, that's another we just talk about the mistakes I make and the biases I held and still hold all night long. But I mean, you know, I had to get comfortable in my skin that like, okay, she may not like me. That's all right. I recognize who I am in this room and the harm that I have, that people have done and that I have done, and who I represent, and that I'm also often in someone else's safe space, right? Like if I'm at the braider or if we walk into church, to recognize that I am now intruding. So not everyone has. Now, what I will say is most have been some of the most brilliant, deepest friendships of my life that I cannot imagine doing without, and have been generous and have been forgiving when we've made mistakes. So, you know, and also like, you got to do the hair. My daughter, you know, like when you walk into a room and your Black daughter's hair is on point and they say, "Where do you take her?" And you say, "I did that," that helps a lot.
Oh, you're 2/3 of the way through the door.
That's right.
And
That's right.
because, you know, I mean, that's a big thing in our community, as I know you know, and we talked about this a little bit last week too. It's such a big deal from a self-esteem perspective for any girl, but then for a Black girl on top of it, who's already feeling, you know, whether she recognizes it or not, who's already feeling, maybe she feels like an outcast or less than. That hair thing is a big deal. If you can get through the room without anybody trying to pet you or looking at you sideways, trying to look at the geometric pattern in your head, you know, it's a win. And so once again, I have to give you props for that. This discussion is great. I just want you to hear what Coach Robin Renee says. Bless you, Heather, for such a firm grip on the reality of Black babies and your willingness to learn more despite it being uncomfortable for you. Getting uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I mean, I do think that culturally, for white people, we're so focused on proving that we're not racist that we actually don't talk about or honestly own it when we're working through our biases.
Because I have a white friend, I mean, a Black friend, I
Right.
do. I have
Right.
one. I even have two. The lady at the gas station, she counts two because she always says hello.
Yeah, well, really us needing to be seen as the good people is really a function of white supremacy.
For
right?
sure.
Yeah.
So I'd like to talk really quickly about transracial adoption and this, because I think it kind of dovetails in a little bit into the idea of supremacy. And because a lot of people believe that there should be no such thing as transracial adoption, and that if you are adopting a Black child or a child of any other race, you're doing it perhaps for nefarious reasons. Either you're trying to feel the white savior business, or
yes.
whatever it is. So, you know, tell us about your experience with adoption.
I mean, we were so ill prepared. It was like, you might need extra lotion. Love is enough. Here's your paperwork. we literally could not have been less prepared. I'll just say, I remember when our children were babies, that I struggled to say the word Black, and not even referring to them, but like literally saying the color Black in their presence. Like, oh my gosh, who in the world thought I could do this thing? Oh yeah, no. And so, yeah, look, there's a lot of systemic racism inside of our adoption system. There's a lot of systemic racism inside of our social work system. Look, white women became social workers literally, and who helps people have babies? Why can't I think of that word?
Midwives, OBGYNs, midwives.
So that we could
Okay.
track race, right? That's why in the beginning of the segregation period and during Jim Crow, white women were trained to do these things so that they could tick that our roots. And I'm not saying all beautiful white women are not amazing social workers. What I am saying is we have not done the work within teaching, because nice white lady teachers and nice white lady social workers and nice white lady nurses are some of the most damaging people and do some of the most systemic damage to Black families, Black women, Black children. Now I'm just a little preaching, but we do that because we have not examined why our grandmas got into this business and the policies and the structures around them that are still there, that are still perpetuating harm. And so when we talk about transracial adoption and who we deem, look, we can talk about literally the racism around that just by how many of our friends and family assumed that my kids were going to have a completely better experience because we were raising them.
Isn't there a, like, just a weird, strange irony to that feeling though? Because let's take it back to the enslaved. Who raised all the babies? Like, that's the weirdest thing to me. Like, literally, from propagation of the enslaved force by the master in the house to wet nursing, even when your baby needed to eat. And like people don't see that. It's like, who do you think raised all the white people? And that idea that and that Ali writes, that's deep, all the things that, you know, we aren't taught systemically putting in place, because I think a lot of times when people think of systemic racism, they think more of which it is this, of course, the legislation, things like redlining, right? We all love Levittown. But when you talk about an entire structure being put in place, social workers, teachers, nurses, it is deep, Ali. That's for real deep, because that means you're surrounded. And you're surrounded by people who are constantly corralling you and shifting you and putting you in positions, whether you think you're being manipulated or not, because the manipulation is so deep and so ingrained that even when you're being slapped upside the head with an anvil, you're like, no, I went to the doctor and that was the nurse and we're all good. Okay, but then you insert Tuskegee and you're like, damn, here comes the anvil again. Shit.
I mean, white women ran homes for Black single moms while they wrote pro-lynching propaganda, right? I mean, I think this idea that if you, and I kind of talked about this in the live video that you guys saw, this idea that if you do something good, like if I go on a missions trip and take a picture with all of these children, that means you can't possibly be living inside of a system that is oppressing other people. It's right. like we can't possibly depersonalize this in any way, that we couldn't possibly think that these structures are still there. I don't know. And I really think if white women should all read Mothers of Massive Resistance before they literally do anything else. Because we should see we should see what we were capable of. We should see who our grandmothers were. We should know. I mean, we should know.
Well, and when you talk about the institutional structures behind that,
mm-hmm.
add the religion piece back into it, like you'd mentioned at the beginning, because so a lot of us battle about religion just in general, you know, this religion's bad, that religion's bad, whatever. without wanting to turn that lens onto Christianity and the fact that, let's be real, if you want to look at where slavery was reinforced, you have to look at the way Christianity, and it's not just in the United States, Christianity across the world has perpetuated this structure. And then so to say to people, to say, especially for, okay, this is totally my opinion, but for me, for people of Black descent to be like, woo, Christianity, the way it is in the book is the way I need to live. I feel like there should be some more investigation of the honest truth. Now, that said, I think if you're looking at religion from a place of, I can't say that. I was going to say of personal morality, but I can't say that because it's not really moral to like enslave people and then kill them. So, you know, that institution of religion, how do you reconcile? Because I know you're a person of faith, and I hope I didn't just make you want to vomit by the way I said that, but as a person of faith, how do you balance this and how do you communicate that with your kids, knowing the structure that created what we know as Christianity right now?
So, I mean, I'm a person of faith, but I would no longer identify as a Christian. I don't follow the teachings of American Christianity anymore. I say a lot of the times, like the way that American Christianity treated my children, pushed us out the door. Like we literally could not reconcile it anymore in a lot of ways, even though I still like have my own faith. So I still have spiritual leaders. We, before COVID, like when we were still gathering, we partake in a Black church that is very liberal and open. And it's really a celebration of Blackness. And it's a place that we love. But I think if I just could offer up another book for white people to read, they could read the book, The Color of Compromise. And it is actually the history of American Christianity, slavery, and racism, and the compromises. And an example I can give of that is one of the things that happens all the time when you talk to Christians about racism is they say that is a heart issue. That is a personal issue. And so therefore we can't talk about it on a systemic level, case closed. In other words, everything that happens within racism, you deal with and you pray with in your heart. But if you read and you understand that thinking really came from pastors trying to have abolitionists and slave owners in the same congregation and maybe wanting some tithe dollars from the slave owners because they had more money.
What?
Right?
No, it would never be money driven.
To a congregation, I'm not going to talk about slavery today. That is for you to deal with in your heart. And ever since then, it's just this thing that white Christians repeat to each other as their get out of jail free card around race, but they don't know where it came from. They don't know why they believe that. They just know that it is the thing that gets them to end the conversation in the quickest, most self-righteous way possible.
I mean, that's truly a thought bomb for me because I look at what's going on politically in our world right now. I think, oh, how can you, I look at the evangelicals and all of that. And I say, how could you possibly be supporting something like this? Well, there it is right there.
Yeah, and they have not examined their early theologians to see if all of the people who said all the things that they live by owned people.
Ooh, that gave me a shudder. Actually, that's the real deal.
But they're pro-life.
Yeah, whose life?
This is where I get myself in trouble.
Hey, listen, I spend a good portion of my time in trouble. So you're in good company here. Oh, that one over there, Nikki, she just gives the big eyeballs, but she's in trouble too. The end. So Jeanette just said that thinking of those clergy takes accountability from the equation. Maybe another reason I'm not religious. Indeed, that is the period, exclamation point, zigzag at the end of that sentence. So that I'm looking forward to checking out that book.
Absolutely. Well, and I think that, okay, so Emily, we could have the Jesus is not white conversation from now until the cows come home. And in some respects, it may not matter, simply because it's that lie that people want to believe, because it warms their heart. Because if
and
he
it
is
makes it so that nothing in their life has to change.
Nothing.
Nothing.
Right. And it doesn't matter geography. None of that matters. It doesn't matter that he would not be pale as the driven snow because he was in the freaking desert. It's like, so none of that matters.
Desert.
No geography matters, no climate, none of that matters. And that's sort of how, for me, that is the pro-life. And it's sort of like, well, okay, that's fine. You can say that Jesus is white and you can say that you're for life. Except if you're for life, then shouldn't you worry about what happens after birth? Because you can't just wipe your hands of it. Because I know 5 years ago, I haven't done it yet recently, but I know 5 or 6 years ago, it cost $13,000 minimum to raise a kid per year.
It's $18,000 a year now.
Oh, okay. So there we go. So I probably didn't need to see that number in my head, Misty.
I believe in truth and fact.
But
to be clear, oh, sorry.
No. I was just gonna say, but that's a thing, and it's great if for however many Heather Andersons there are, which is awesome. Because I'm not one of those people. You can give a child love, and it might be skewed if your intent is there. It might be a little skewed, but if you can give a child love, then you give a child love, and that's an awesome thing. And that is how I feel. I am not object to white people adopting Black or whatever other. I'm gonna say Black because I'm African American, or Black, whatever you want to call me. But there's something that happens when you tell a woman not to have an abortion. There's something else that happens on the other side of that. And that's great if someone wants to adopt a brown baby, but we also all know that people will leave this country to get a white baby. So when there's like a full group of people, little babies, little kids who need to be adopted. But you get on a plane and you go spend a month in another country because this is not what you want. So even if a woman chooses to have a baby and give that baby up for adoption, Black women, brown women, our babies are still getting the short end of the stick. And so it's a much more significant issue when, are people going to abuse abortions? Absolutely, they are. But, so nobody gets an abortion because maybe a handful are going to abuse it. It's like, you can't police everyone.
People abuse Twinkies too, but no one's getting arrested for it. I mean, I just, let's be clear about it. Black babies have less value.
Yes. 100%.
And, if we want to really be honest about the discussion, when we're talking about abortion, we're still not talking about Black babies. They are much more concerned about leave those Black babies in the system. And maybe it comes back to, down the road, that's going to be your workforce, that those are going to be your people that don't necessarily get the good jobs, get the great opportunities. So those are your people that are going to be doing your menial level, working at the gas station,
right?
Type of jobs. They don't matter.
I'm still waiting for pro-lifers to explain why Black children get $6,000 less per pupil in America inside of education, or right. So if we are caring about all people, why are we comfortable? And PS, I could say the same thing about the good liberals of Minneapolis, because we like to be super liberal. But let's also name the fact that we have one high school in town, same school district, that looks like a college campus. And we have one on the other side of town that hasn't had a remodel in many years. It has 200 students in it, right? So like, lest liberals think that they can just, especially white liberal women, that they can just point their finger at white Christian women and call them archaic. We still don't seem to, in a really good liberal city, be able to treat Black children any better inside of our school system.
Well, and then heaven forbid they get into school, and heaven forbid they excel. You know, there's always this, if a Black child does well, their parents are pushing them too hard. If a Black child doesn't do well, then they have nobody at home supporting them. You know, there's always this paradox of the Black parent doesn't do enough or does too much. If a white child doesn't do well in school, let's get them to the learning specialist. Let's do all of these other things. It's not lost, I think, on anybody here, like, so not just the three of us, but anybody listening, it's not lost, the disparity. I would love to know what your thoughts are. I mean, you've said it, you've got a great tribe. I have, since we've met, some of your friends, hello, Heather's friends, have become my friends too. So it's brilliant that these conversations can happen now. And even though they're uncomfortable, you know, the three of us at least are like, who the hell cares? But I'd love to know, what is it about your community, do you think, that is special? And what is it that other communities, other listeners perhaps, can do to build communities like yours?
You know, I really work hard at creating space and opportunity for the people who follow me or who listen to me to mess up. Because I think, you know, and I really talk a lot about what it feels like in my body, in my mind, in my heart, when I mess up racially, when I'm examining a bias. And so, you know, oftentimes, I'll just share this. So when I make a mistake, if I say something and it's bad and it's public, which I've done, right? I have this hot feeling up the back of my neck. I have this dead thud in my chest. And I'm instantly thinking, this is too big to clean up. You have to lie. Everybody knows you are a loser and you have failed and you can never be in any arena again, right? Those are all the things that happen into my body when a person of color calls me out on something. That's what happens. And sometimes it's just a thing between a friend and I feel all of those things and I go, oh yeah, that's right. Okay. Sometimes it's deeper and a trigger and it, you know, ties back to a whole thing. And I spend 48 hours wrestling with it and I don't sleep. And sometimes I have to journal and I have to read articles and then I go talk to my white friends and I say, oh my gosh, I'm going to just tell you this horrible thing that I did because it's going to be bigger inside of my head than it's going to be if I say it out loud to you. And I really wrestle with that. And I'm thinking the whole time, where did I pick this bias up? Where else am I thinking this? Oh my gosh, I've been thinking this about this group of people. Oh, this is a thing. And I go read. And then when I do that process, then I just tell my people, I'm like, here's what I did this week, and here's what I'm learning from it. And I model, I think what we don't have enough in white culture in America is a modeling of how to undo this. You have to undo this thing. And that's what it feels like to undo a bias. You stand next to a Black man, early in my journey, right? And I would think all these horrible thoughts that my dad said in our house growing up. right? And then I'd stand there and I'd think, I'm talking to this person. And in my head, I'm hearing my dad's voice say things. This is really uncomfortable. But then you go home and you do your work and you listen and you read and you understand. And then you go stand again and you have to unlearn it. And so for me, what I try to do is hold really firm boundaries, because I don't coddle white women. I did for a long time. I coddled, and you know what I learned? They just always want more coddling. There's just not enough preciousness.
Precious.
We're very precious.
Delicate.
Use exactly the right words. You have to use exactly the right words to talk about your child's experience so that I can hear you.
And then you can say, I hear you.
Yeah.
I hear you.
And then you can tell me why it's not real.
what I hear Heather speaking about is cultivating the environment that she not only wants for her children, but for her family and for herself. And I think overarching, like that's like a thing, right? I think I'm 49, and I think that there are friendships that I have, and they are friendships that are, my sisters and I developed our relationships as we got older. I'm like 14 years older than my youngest sister. But the relationships that we have, they are out loud, but they are quiet, they are comfortable, they are comforting. And we don't always agree on everything. And we've come to a place where we don't have to agree on everything. And what I hear you saying, Heather, is it's almost like the people were already there, but you examined how you were responding to them, went back, looked in the mirror and said, okay, I got to go back out there. I got to go back out there. And not just go back out there, but examine the relationship that you wanted to have versus the relationship that you were told it would be. And like, yes, do the work, right? But that could be said for all of our relationships, right? And in our partnerships and in our marriages and in our parenting. And I think that just as human beings, those are things that get lost in translation when people are like, I want to have this type of relationship with this person, but that's not what we're asking for. And so what although yours is so rooted in race because of the dynamic of your family, but you're actually asking for a human experience. And the more you learn and grow about what that human experience is for you, you are then literally creating the stage, the platform, the whatever for your children. And I think one of the things that I really love about having met you, Heather, and the conversations that we've had is you're not bulldozy.
Some people would disagree, but
oh, I mean,
well, but are those the delicate ones though?
Right,
you have to get them first.
Yeah. And are those the ones, like I say this all the time, change is only change if you change. And changing from the white perspective is not a change at all. Like that's just you being comfortable. You want me to experience change in a way that is comfortable for you. Well, no.
Well, we have to fit the mold that, I mean, the shape of the mold is nebulous because we can never seem to fill the corners. The shape of the mold changes just as the yardstick changes. And, when you don't have the roadmap, how can you possibly follow the path? I don't know. It's a lot.
And we don't have the roadmap. That's the thing. We don't have the roadmap because the roadmap was built. So I took my kids to the Freedom Center, 2 years ago. And they were astonished by several things up in Ohio. And they were astonished by several things. And one of the things that they were astonished by was the size of the shackles. There were these teeny tiny little shackles, and they were astonished by that. They were noticing the lack of distance between leg chains. It's not even like an actual gate. they were noticing they had these pillars, and on the pillars were the history of the lineage of families from when they started to modern day time, who would literally amass their wealth that could directly be traced back to slavery. And when they saw what some of those I mean, we know JP Morgan Chase, when they saw some of those institutions, because they were old enough that, they know what Chase Bank is. They know what Harvard is. And so when they saw that and they understood, it's like, now you have to calculate that, because this is how long this family got to build wealth off of free labor.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, we'll never catch up. I mean, we know that a Black person has to be like, some 300 years old to even think about amassing the wealth generationally, right? Doesn't mean that every white person is wealthy. Yeah, we get that. Yeah,
but they can still go get a loan.
Right, exactly. So,
and go to Target and return things without a receipt and.
Yeah.
And so I hear you cultivating the relationships that you want to have intentionally. Mm-hmm. And it's not a racial thing, although that may have been what the intent started off as, for obvious reasons, right?
Sure.
And I just think that that's really cool, because there are a lot of people. I was a dancer, Missy was a dancer, and like sometimes in the dance world with the dancers, not necessarily with the like the ED or the AD, a lot of times in the dance world, it's such, okay, not the classical ballet world, let me be very clear, but a lot of times in the dance world, it's just a hodgepodge of people, like from everywhere, and that's what you get used to, and you get used to people just being okay because you're already like the weird one, and you've been the weird one, because if you're dancing professionally, that means in high school you were the weird one, and then in
Mm-hmm.
middle school you were probably the weird one. So it's like and I went to performing arts high school, so it was all like the weirdo freaks in regular school, they just were all in my high school. So, but when you come out in the real world and you see someone actually being intentional about the relationships that they want to have, because you understand just how significant the impact is, not only on your family, but on you. And great kids come from great moms. And so if you're doing the work, then you are giving your kids an experience that, is it as a Black mom? No, because you're not a Black woman. But is it as a great mom? Absolutely. And it's about your intent. And you understood very early on that your intent couldn't just be, the advantages I can give my kids, because every mom thinks that, right? Where you literally like, oh snap, I have to look at this. I got to turn that dial a little bit more, because it is very hard to be a Black kid in this country. Mm-hmm. And the fact that you said that, the fact that you understand that, because even if you're 4 times as good, it's still not good enough. And that sucks.
Really sucks. It's really hard to tell a kid they can be anything they want to be, but never put their hands in the pocket in the store.
Yeah.
That's really hard.
Yeah.
And I know your son has gotten it for snowboarding. Like when you wrote that about your daughter, like, who's this Black kid who's snowboarding? Like, not even skiing, right? Like, who's this Black kid who's snowboarding?
But we don't leave him at the ski hill for that reason, right? All the other moms drop and run and come back, and we don't feel comfortable doing that.
Nope.
And that's such a big deal. I remember growing up and my mother would not let me, she wouldn't let me do anything. She's actually watching this. And Mom, I'm just going to apologize and say, I understand now. Thank you. But I tell you, like, all the kids on the street would get into the truck with the neighbor and they would go to the ice cream shop. I was never allowed to do it. Mm-hmm. All the kids on the street would get on their bikes and they'd go riding all over the neighborhood. I was never allowed to do it. And I remember thinking, oh, my parents hate me. They won't let me do what I want to do. But looking back on it, they were protecting me without coming out and just saying, hey, listen, these people out here don't value you. Oh, they're saying hi to my mom. They don't value you as a person. Your
So
friends
cute.
may see you, and listen, we had a great neighborhood. I say it all the time. I do think my mom was maybe a little bit overly protective within our neighborhood, but you step a couple of streets away and I am sure that it wasn't safe. And that
Yeah.
this is still going on 326 years later from my childhood. Like it's just,
Yeah.
it's sad. It hurts.
Yeah. Yeah. It is, and it is. And it's, like I said, the thing that resonates with me,
Oh, I think she froze.
oh,
That's a
I think so
great
too.
thought.
There she is.
We're still here. Oh, Nikki, darling.
I am here.
Yeah, we keep losing you. But
Oh.
you keep getting paused with your mouth agape. It's fantastic. I'm going to turn that into a meme. I can't wait.
No,
As you were
I
saying.
mean, it's looking at the intentional choices that we make, and looking at, I do let my boys go off to the park, and they have to have their cell phones. And the rule is you answer that phone. If we sound off, you answer that phone. You don't answer that phone, you lose that privilege. Because I don't think it's fair. We put the fear of God, Buddha, Allah, random Hindu goddesses, and maybe Dante's fourth level of hell into them, because it's like, you have to pay attention. Like, you have to pay attention. You don't have the privileges that your white friends have, and you don't even look like you're about to do the wrong thing. And if you do, the mantra is 773-818-7662. I cannot have this conversation with you without my mother. I'm a minor. And you just keep repeating it, or you haul ass, go through the back way and get your butt at home, and you scream, yell, coming in hot. Yes, we tell our children that. I don't want them to feel unfree. I don't want them to get, killed, maimed, or accused of something. But it's like, we try to find a delicate balance, but it is a very different. And we have to say to them, look, you're half white, but you're not all white. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, the Black in you shines through.
Yeah.
Aries got the nappy hair. I'm like, boo, I'm sorry, you got the nappy hair. You just gonna have to work with it. You just gonna have to.
So
happy nappy.
For your kids, have they expressed you any, as of course, prior to the move to the city and then since, do they express to you any questionable circumstances that they've been in, either from, friends, parents, or authority figures? What does that look like since you have done all of this work to create this environment for them?
Oh, yeah. I mean, some of it, when they were younger, they would say things, I don't like that person, or you know what I mean? And we didn't have language. And so now a lot of times we'll talk about it. We'll talk about a teacher, or we'll talk about an experience at school. And sometimes I'll just say to them, I don't know that we have the language for what you're feeling in that classroom, but I trust that your body knows what's up. I trust that you know what's up and something is off. And someday this teacher, because I think the other thing is that, like, because we set up the system that there has to be something blatant that you can actually address, that it can't just be like, you know what, white lady, when I step into your classroom, I feel othered. And she has to go home and figure that out. You have to wait till there's like this provable thing that happens. And then there's this,
I lost my sound. Can you guys hear me?
Still here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay.
Yeah,
Oh, that was
ahead.
weird.
So I think that so many times it is the nebulous things, these tiny little, was that something? Was that not something? Why did she say? And it takes so much work to decode
Yes.
what,
Yes.
those instances. And so a lot of times we just say, okay, you just don't feel comfortable in that classroom. There's something racialized happening there. And maybe someday this person will prove it. But in the meantime, I trust your body. I trust you. And so, but that took me sometimes I had my own relationship with the teacher because I was the,
Right.
snack mom, whatever. And then my relationship with the teacher didn't always extend to my children or didn't extend to the lunchroom teacher and so, we have a name for it in the TRA community. It's like a white ticket syndrome. So when your children are with you, they might have a certain experience because of literally their proximity to you. And then, but let me just tell you, them going to middle school was like a whole new, like my husband goes to parent teacher conferences and he shows up in his suit and tie, and the papers that were sitting by the teacher's desk get closed. Oh, she's doing great. Everything's great. Wonderful. Can't wait to see her next tomorrow. Wait a minute. What was all that stuff you had on the side? Oh, yeah.
Yeah. First of all,
Which, by the way, what was the Black parent going to endure from that person? What was the Black parent going to endure?
there's just something wrong with middle school across the board. The
That's
kids are
so
crazy,
accurate.
the adults are crazy. I mean, it's just a vortex of bullshit. There's something wrong with middle school. But yes, as a person who, my son was bullied by a teacher in middle school, and I can tell you his attitude changed.
Yeah.
He liked this teacher
Yeah.
a lot in the beginning. He started to get quiet. He, really kind of dragged into that class. He was trying to avoid going to that class. He actually got caught skipping that class. And I was like, my kid, he's a little bit out to lunch sometimes, but he's not the kid to hide underneath the stairwell. Like, what's going on? He still wouldn't talk about it. And finally, when it came out, it blew up. And I remember saying, I watched this change happen, and I tried to have conversations that, he couldn't really articulate what was going on, but there was definitely a massive shift in my child related to this situation. And my mom noticed it too. He was just somebody different. And, I wish that people could understand from the child's perspective what that kind of imprinting does, because it sticks with you forever. I was bullied by a teacher. I still think about that woman. And I think some things that were probably not nice, even still, about that woman, because it's stuck with me and it has affected me and has affected actually who I am, to the positive and the negative, to this minute. So I'm really glad that you shared that, because I hope that in reviewing, at least spending a little bit of time with biases, I'm hoping that people that are listening, and listen, you can be totally down with Brown, but that doesn't mean that you don't have biases. And taking the time to reflect upon those things and see what that means to you and how you're interacting with people, in person, on one dimension, over the phone, it makes a difference. When you call Comcast, bad example, their customer service is the worst. Absolutely. But when you hear somebody with an accent and you're automatically like, yes, my problem is, that's a bias. All they said was, hello, my name is Rahib. You don't know what Rahib knows or what he doesn't know, but you've already laid your bias into that situation.
Oh, see, I like it when they have like a very American name. My name is Sam. And I'm like, dude, no, it's not, but okay. I'm like, okay.
But you know what? Why do they do that? They do that probably to protect these people from these schmeckles that call in and are like, oh, I don't want to talk to you. I want to talk to an American. Well, Sam might really be an American. You don't know. He might just have a very thick accent. You don't know. So then at least it gets them to the next layer before they're insulted and belittled, which is sad.
Well, and I think it's really interesting that you say that, because my father-in-law is from Greece, and bless his heart, he's been here for almost 50 years. My ex will be 50 in December. And talking to my father-in-law, I'm like, dude, I swear you just came here yesterday. Like, accent thick, heavy. And you're like, dude, what are you saying? Like, he was calling the the stairs, a ladder. I was like, dude, I was like 50 years this man has been here. And when I hear my baby's daddy, when I hear him talk sometimes, I totally hear his Greek accent. It is not heavy, it is not thick, it is not, you guys probably wouldn't notice it, but when I hear it, when he's been by his dad, and I'm like, oh, that's so cute. Because he's totally an American. He was totally born here and he was raised here. He lived in Greece for a little bit. But I can hear it come out in certain words that he says. They don't necessarily have to be Greek words. And it's just really, it's really, really interesting because he doesn't even recognize it. And he is an American for sure, born here. But that whole conversation about shifting the perception of what a teacher was going to say about your child because your husband walked in with a suit and tie, you know, and it's like, really? Like, that's blatant to me, you know, and it's like, I don't know, it's challenging because my son did have a teacher that she didn't like him, and I knew she didn't like him, and she knew that I knew that she didn't like him, and I was like, I stayed in her face, not in an aggressive way, but boys with a high intellect, guess what? They're annoying. But for some reason, when it's a brown child and they're boys, they're troublemakers. And I made it very clear where my children had come from. And I said, so here's the deal. My kids have never gone to public school. They were in private school. And I said, I wish that's where they were, because they're going to get a different kind of education now being here. And I made it very clear, like, we're not doing that. And that experience kind of tainted school for him.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't have a way around it other than to fifth grade last year for him. No, God, he's in seventh grade. So I lied. That was a year and a half ago. Fifth grade, there was an amazing, 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 amazing teacher. And I didn't do all that stuff. I didn't even know who my kid's teacher was the first day of fifth grade, right? I'm that mom. Just, we'll wing it, baby. We'll figure it out. There's only 3 options. And I was crossing my fingers, my heart, my toes, my hair. And I was just like, he got that teacher. And he's a 40 plus something year old man who's just been teaching, has a beard that comes down here, white guy, and he just is no nonsense. He's like, yeah, when the kids don't do what they're supposed to, they know what the option are. You can come in during your recess or you can stay after school. And it was just that simple. And he got my son. And because he got my son, because he got kids, I don't even feel like he had like some special radar for Aries. Yes, we named our kid after the god of war. But it changed his experience. And it wasn't about trying to label him. It was just about, this is where this kid is. And this teacher would say to him, I know you've got more than this. So I need you to do and perform based on what I think you have, not based on what you think you want to give. It wasn't thrown at him. It wasn't yelled at him. He wasn't being scolded. He was just like, yeah, I think you got more. But I hate that he had that year where he experienced a teacher who didn't like him, because again, there's that unknown, right? Is my kid annoying? Yeah, he's totally annoying. For sure. He was a 4th grade boy. Of course he's annoying. There's nothing more annoying. But it always creeps in. Is it because he's a brown boy? Always. Is it because that is what is seen? Is that the filter that my kids walk through? You know, like they're, you know, like it's a disco and they're walking through the glitter, except it's mud. And you're just like, that's the filter that they walk into. So their experience, someone's perception of them is degraded because they walk in already with points taken off.
Right.
I mean, look, the belief gap in teachers that teachers hold for Black students is says that they don't believe our kids can do the work, want to be there. There's the discipline gap, the opportunity gap, right? I mean, there's so many gaps in education that literally just come down to white teachers that you have statistically the odds are so stacked against our kids. I mean, I think in Minnesota, if you're a Black girl, you're 8.5 times more likely to be suspended than if you're a white girl. So if my child gets in trouble with a teacher, statistically, if I don't run that through my brain, I'm a fool.
Right.
And so that's why Dr. Bettina Love, who's one of my favorite people who talks about education, she says that in white schools, we spirit murder Black children. In schools, we spirit murder them.
Mm-hmm.
We kill their spirits.
Yeah. And then we wonder why they don't perform. You can't perform if you're dead.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so deep.
And I think that that's a thing too. And so when you were talking about the hair piece, and you guys obviously, you're able to provide in a way for your kids that not everyone else can. I mean, Misty and I are as well. But you have, we were talking about this, Misty, on another show. It is a huge piece socially, especially for Black girls, if their hair is in a certain way. And it's not going to lay flat, and it's not going to necessarily end the way it started off, depending on
On the humidity.
And so when the construct is based solely on the white perspective, you have failed before you have stepped foot into school, unless I'm saying this on purpose for my Black women who are listening to this, unless you got that good hair. That wavy, crinkly, you might have a chance, you might get those edges smooth. Look, I danced and I didn't have a relaxer and I didn't have extensions. I just pulled that, snatched that back, put it in a bun, tied a scarf, and kept it moving. That was me. Not everyone is me. But that's a thing. And it's a thing when it's time to get your braids redone, or it's, whatever that is, and not being able to control the way you look, and then having it be exposed in middle school.
That terrible place.
That terrible place. And that's a thing. But when the overarching foundation is based on what white girls look like, and it is a different thing for Black boys. That thing is a different thing, because you can crew cut a Black boy, keep it moving, you can fade it. I know so many Black boys who know how to cut hair, whatever that is, right? It's a different thing, because you can cut it short and you can keep it moving. And if they're playing sports, a lot of times, most likely, that's what they do anyway. That looks pretty much the same as a white boy is going to cut his hair, right? Different. But not with girls. And with Black girls, there's a certain way that it can be, and there's a certain way that it can't be. And if it's not that way, it so affects how you can have the esteem that you need just to survive a day, let alone a month or the entire year.
Or a slumber party. Think
or
about
oh my
Think
God.
about what it is to go to a slumber party, and you are going to wake up jacked up. It's going to happen. Or you have to go and you have to have a schmata on your head, and everyone wants to know why do you have a schmata on your head? What is this? And then you've got to explain it. And then everybody wants to touch your hair, and then you've got another problem, because here we go with this touching again. This is why conversations are so important.
Mark.
Fried, died, and laid to the side. I have a bit of a flat iron addiction. I mean, Literally, if hair number 742 is out of place, I will pull that hair straight. It's just what I do. But once again, it's the identity piece. It is,
Right.
I know I want to look a certain way. Is that informed by Eurocentric standards? Yeah, probably. I mean, I grew up in the suburbs, damn it. It's just the way it is.
Mhm.
You don't actually have to throw it all out, but we have to accept that this is what it is.
Right.
You know, if somebody shaves her head, everyone says, oh, she's so bold. And now I'm cancer aside or some massive illness, but sometimes you shave your head because you want to take your hair out of the conversation.
Mm.
I did that and I got reamed for it. I was dancing for a company and I cut my hair short. I didn't shave it, but I definitely cut my hair short. And the first thing Black artistic director said to me was, why would you shave your head? You look like a boy. And I'm really, I got TNA for days. You know, I'm like, really? You think I look like a boy? So shaving my hair. And this was coming from a Black woman in a Black dance company. And so you get it from all sides, or I was gay, you know, and if a white girl shaves her hair or has a cute little pixie cut, it's like, oh my gosh, that's so cute. But it's, or, you know, it's, what's her mug? Breakfast at Tiffany's.
Oh, Hepburn.
Thank you. Yeah, because she had a cute little pixie. Or, you know, Rosemary's Baby. How come I can't remember anybody's name? Woody Allen's ex, Mia
Farrow.
Yeah. So you get to be these sort of glamorous, the Hollywood icons versus, oh, you look like a boy or you look butch. And so I'm like, really, I have a little head and an olive oil neck. I look butch, but okay. So, but it is that piece of all of those things matter. It's not just about our kids getting out of bed with the messy feather dew and rolling into school or swim gym.
Hated it.
Who thought that was a good idea? I mean,
I don't know. My mom got me out of that stuff. She was like, no, she's sick.
It's everything that goes into, even I literally went, oh, I am so happy I have these boys. Everything that went into the idea behind, and I get it, is swimming a skill? Yeah, great, it's awesome. But you know what? You can actually be sufficient in gym and not have to do swim gym. And it's terrifying because there's so much that goes into that. And there's so much that has to be explained. And it is not designed with our girls in mind.
No. So I want to jump in with this question because this is from Allie, and this is a great question. Heather, so she says, this might not be a part of the conversation. It is. But what are your opinions about TV in terms of representation of POC? Have you seen a shift into more realness? And if you don't feel represented in media as how you are versus who you should be?
I mean, you know, the kids and I talk about this all the time. We were watching Harry Potter the other night, right? And my son was like, well, there's 2 Black kids in that room. And I was like, sure. Are they Black? Are they just there? Do they have a line? Are they the lead? Are they the story? Are they the heroine? Do they get to say a line? You know, and so one of the shows I appreciate the most is Blackish because the hairstyles are the hairstyles and the grandma has the wraps. And so, you know, I mean, I think so often, I always just wonder about that. Like, what is it like for a Black actor to have a white person writing his lines, to have to look a certain way? I can't imagine the frustration of that. But yeah, so I think it's the representation in books and literature and shows. You have to work so hard to get that. to see that. As a matter of fact, I took a not like a trashy read up to the cabin we rent this summer, and I'm like reading it and I'm just like, okay, it's sort of borderline fiction, whatever. And we get to this part where she has to call someone for support because she has a drug addiction, this little white girl. And of course she has to call a Black woman. And then this white author is writing this Black woman's voice and experience. And it was so full of like racist, and I was like, even in literature, like who does she think she is writing from an experience that she does not know? But yeah, and then I'm like, toss that book aside, pick up the next book. And so it's so in every
Your
single
poor husband. He
What?
walks into the bedroom and I said, your poor husband. He walks in and he's like, oh, all right, guess we're looking for some new books.
That's the burn pile.
but like even that, my husband, he works in sales and he goes, before COVID, when he was at dinner, he has the picture of our kids as his screensaver, and he has to set that down in the middle of the table. Right. And that's one of his cues that he does to try to stave off some of the commentary and the racism that happens. So, I mean, I don't know if I answered a question, but I would say we have so little. And when I see it done really well, or what I think is like more authentic, I'm always so moved. And then we DVR it and watch it and talk about it. But I think so many times the Black experience or having a Black person on, it's either just it's the sidekick or the best friend, right? It's all the things that perpetuate.
He's great at sports. He's always great at sports.
Always great at sports. Yes. And
except for on Blackish.
Yeah, true.
Which I'm sure they do on purpose, because every single episode I'm like, oh, they're saying that and that and that and that. And I love the way the white neighbor is on Blackish.
The blonde.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So so I would say we definitely need, more Black art, more Black representation, more authentic, and less white gatekeepers to make all of those things happen.
Yes.
And I think it's
part of it.
I think it's interesting that you are speaking about how this Black character was written, and because I don't know that another white woman who wasn't raising Black kids would have spotted that. You have a tribe, Heather, and your tribe, you are in that tribe. They have accepted you as their own, and you now approach things from this very intentional perspective, but a lot of it has become ingrained in you. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of things that are viewed and seen. Like all of the 80s was Black people were either cops or they were robbers.
And actually, I would extend that to pretty much any minority. There was a trope for everyone.
Right.
The Asian person was the scientist, or, they were the one with the broken English and just kind of the comedian, everyone laughed at. The 80s were actually, as much as I love the 80s and all, but like 80s movies, not good.
Right.
I mean,
and it was.
Sorry.
No, go ahead. No, go ahead.
I started to notice it when I tried to read some of my favorite childhood classics to my kids, right? Little House on the Prairie.
Ooh.
But I grew up in Christian world. That was pretty much the second Bible. And so, you start reading that and you're like, oh, I'll just skip this page. Oh, wait, what are they talking? How are they speaking of Native Americans? Oh, wait, what? Oh, throw the book out.
You can't.
All the old musicals that I used to watch, right? Oh, okay. That person's literally, the person of color is the servant.
You cannot watch a musical from.
No, but those are all things I grew up loving. And you have to, that would be another thing I would say, you have to really be willing to give some things up that you really used to hold dear. Christmas, my classics, my reading, the traditions that I used to have, my in-laws, all of those things are now different because my value system changed when I decided that I wanted to make space for everyone to have a full experience. And so, yeah, like I think sometimes when you're talking to white people, you can take them so far and then you rub up against this thing that is there. Like I remember I wrote a post about going to the Mall of America to see a Black Santa and how exciting it was. And we booked it 2 weeks out. I had a white woman full on meltdown rage at me. Like, Santa's white. How could you possibly take this away from my kids? And I was like, look, America is for your kids, lady, right? My kids can have a Black Santa. It's fine. A fictional figure could be anybody if Jesus can be white.
Right. Like just all
Oh, yes.
emotional over like he's not real, girl. He's not real.
But
Walk away.
it was something that meant her child's experience might have to shift. And
Right.
that's where you lose white people
Right.
often.
Well, it gets back to discomfort.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's been this way for all this long, all this time. Why does my child have to be uncomfortable? Well, because there's an entire, I like when you say people group, there's an entire people group that has been uncomfortable
Mhm.
and has aligned and has just been like, well, okay, that's what it is. So that's what it'll be. I mean, how many rows and rows and rows and rows and rows, and I'm sure it seemed like an endless wall of white dolls.
Yeah.
And thinking that is okay, that is the norm. And no, Robin, Santa is not
That is
real.
not real.
Mm-mm. Santa is not real. But and seeing that and being like, no, it's okay. It's okay for that Black kid to have a white doll. Okay, of course, layer upon layer upon layer upon layer, you're reinforcing that the desired toy, the desired space to be is white with that shiny golden hair and those sparkly, not even real blue eyes. And
When experiments have shown what an impact that has
Yes.
had on
yes,
Black children
yes,
and how they
yes,
disassociate, even Black kids that are raised in Black families, disassociate from their heritage because it's easier based on the modeling that happened when they were kids. The dolls, the magazines, the TV shows, all of these things, chip and
The
chip,
Band-Aids.
Band-Aids,
yes,
bras, all of these things. You know, nude.
Right.
When I look at something and it says nude, I'm like, yeah, nude for who? Psh. And out it goes, you know? And we want to say that we're more culturally sensitive. And I know someone's going to send me a message about how we're doing better than we used to. It's not enough. It's 2020. We like to say that we're more culturally sensitive, but people are still arguing about the Band-Aids and how rude it is that you have to have different colored nudes and Band-Aids. But to say that we don't completely invalidates an entire portion of the population. And when is that unacceptable? When do we have to stop changing? When do your kids have to stop changing for everybody else? And when does everybody else start to think, oh, well, maybe it's time for me to experience that? I will get off my soapbox. Sorry.
Well, and when what the other thing is, like, every time I unpack a bias, it changes something fundamentally inside of me, and I like myself better. I am not the same woman who came into this journey. I have more confidence. I have deeper friendships. I know how to handle hard things. So much so that often when I'm in all white spaces, I am an affront to white people because you know what I'm saying. And so
I'm sorry, it's not funny. It's just funny. It's like, because I totally understand, like, to them you've almost like betrayed them.
Because you're talking straight. It's not even like you're, suggesting that they be tarred and feathered. You're just speaking.
Like, I'll say that to a person. I'll just be like, that statement isn't real. here's the statistics. It shows bias, and you could read these 4 things if you wanted to. And there is such a drama meltdown. I don't have a racist bone in my body. She is the nicest person in the world. Blah blah. Blah. And I'm like, I'm literally talking about the fact that we have a system that imprisons people because of who they are, and that shouldn't be. That we have men that get pulled over because of who they are, or get murdered because of who they are, and we all shouldn't be okay with that. We all shouldn't look the other way. We all should be talking about that with our uncles at Thanksgiving as if it mattered today. Right. And so like, yes, it has, yes, you have personal things that you have to work on, but like, oh my gosh, just acknowledge. It's like, I don't know, like the preciousness is its own abuser.
Gollum just came into
down.
Gollum just went across my face from Lord of the Rings. The precious.
I mean, it's a fabulous statement because it's very, very powerful.
Yeah. Well, and it is that, because what they're essentially saying is, I'm willing to overlook just heinous abuse because I don't want to be uncomfortable. That's what they're saying.
Yep.
Yes.
My comfort
and that's
is more important than your life.
Yes.
My comfort is more important than your freedom.
Yep.
My comfort is more important than your emotional health, stability, and well-being. Yes. Period.
That's and I will take it a step further, and I will militarize my comfort, and I will use my station and my comfort as a weapon, not out of necessity, but just if I feel like I'm not getting my way. Because our Black children, our Black boys especially, they're not just in danger from when there's the potential for them to have actually done something, because let's face it, they're boys and they're going to do something. But it's the potential of someone just deciding that they fit the description. Even if you're 5 shades a different color and 3 inches a different height, but you fit the description. And I think that that's the really sad part, is that someone says, I'm willing for you to not be okay.
Yeah. For
me to be okay. It's like, wow. And that's what brings me back to that level of humanity in terms of your journey. Heather, your journey is a lot about the humanity that you've discovered. And it's hard when someone says that, nope, I don't want to be uncomfortable, because I guess for me, it reinforces that there's just a whole group of people that don't see us as human. And I can't escape that. We can't escape that, because it's literally someone's perspective of who I am, and they don't have to meet me.
It's a collective perspective, which makes it worse.
It's a collective, yeah.
Because every day you have to be locked and loaded for the battle.
Yeah. And you don't know when the battle.
Let me just slip this in, because she said it's the ultimate white privilege to feel exhausted by the race conversation. And you know, how many of us, like us 3 just right here, have heard somebody say, you know what, I just don't want to talk about that. Does everything have to be about race?
But it is for us.
I mean, it's not like I wake up tomorrow and I get to be less colorful and I get a whole day where like race just isn't a thing for me. I don't get to take it off. And now that said, I'm lucky. I have a great tribe of friends where I honestly just get to be myself. And we should all have that. But if it's isolated to this little compound, and then you go out into the street and you hit it, once again, we're talking about psyches here. How does that affect? And when we turn it back and look at our children who are, you know, we work to protect, and we want them to see the world, but they know that they have our protection.
Yeah.
And they're wrapped up in that and they're enveloped in it. And then we have to let them go. And I don't know if it's harder for them or for us. I know I'm a nervous wreck just thinking about it. Like I have trouble letting Harrison go to his friend's house. So, you know, and how do we get past that? How do we get past that when so many people are just so tired of the conversation? It's so hard. And yes, I am mocking. I am, because I think it's ridiculous.
Right. And it's just that stand, right? It's like we're taking a stand. We're not going to discuss this. I'm not racist. I've never been mean to anyone. I don't have white privilege. I don't benefit. I'm not wealthy. And so I'm tired of having this conversation. Well, all right, cool. I'll just
I guess that's
sip some tea. I guess we're done and scene, you know. And sometimes you can creep people along a little bit further. Excuse me. Sometimes you don't want to. I don't want to tell someone that. Sometimes I don't want to keep having the conversation that I don't tell my kids that the police are there to serve and protect them, because you don't know the history of the police. I don't tell my kids that. That's a lie.
Accurate.
And I'm not going to set them up for that. And I'm not going to tell my kids that you can do everything that your friends can do. You can run off and go to the store. I'm not going to do that. They can go to the CVS by our house because they know us. That's it. But we can't afford some of those things that are just so egregiously white are death sentences or potential death sentences for our kids.
Yeah.
And we know that as we sit here, the three of us, we know that as we sit here, we cannot get to our kids all the time. As they get older, as they travel out into the world more and more, as they want to go to overnight camp, as they want to do all of the things that are just normal kid things, right? We're not always going to be able to get to them.
Yeah.
You know, so we have to kind of Borg collective them and hope that in that moment, you know, we can tap into that.
Send the brainwaves. Charles
Right,
Xavier.
you know,
Yeah.
like, we know this. And so we either lock them in the basement or
They frown upon that.
that we would get in trouble for. That we would for sure. That somehow locked in the basement, you know, Child Protective Services would find us. And yeah.
Yeah. Another bad example. So Heather, we're getting toward the end, but I have to ask you, so what do your babies want to do when they fly the coop? Do they know how they want to adult and where they want to adult? Do they talk about it?
So my daughter wakes up every morning with plans for days, and it always has a plan. And then she has a plan for her plan for her plan. So she would like to run track. She is an incredible sprinter and long jumper. And so she would like to run track at a university. She would like to major in political science, maybe be a private investigator, maybe a lawyer, potentially work her way up to the White House. She really enjoys debate. She does want to do a year or two in Africa. She would like to go and have that experience, but she's not sure when that's going to fit in. So like, she's thinking about an HBCU, depends on where the best track program is. So yeah, she's has a lot of things planned out. My son, he's my orderly introvert, loves process, loves thinking. I don't know that he has necessarily like as many plans, but he would like to do something where he can snowboard a lot, be free a lot. You know, I think he definitely has a goal of being a video game designer, and that market is for sure going to be open and inviting and not saturated, because that's not
Oh, never.
what all of our boys are going to do. But yeah, I think something in his world is going to be very linear, very, he's going to do something that repeats itself a lot, the order is going to, I could see him being an architect, right? Like, I think we'll see what his little, my husband and I are firstborns, raising two firstborns. And of the three of us, he's the only introvert. And so,
wow.
So he's the most outspoken introvert because he has to be to get an opinion in this house. Like he has to throw his foot down once in a while, because the rest of us just kind of are so used to, going. So yeah, there's a lot of very strong debates in our home. We are 4 very strong-willed people.
That sounds amazing. And these kids sound amazing. And I'm already going to vote for your daughter. So that's it. I mean, I don't care if she's like voting for PTA president, running for PTA president, I'm going to vote for her. She just sounds like she's got it all together. And I love that. And, I don't know what it is about boys in this age category, but they're just kind of all over the place. So they'll figure it out. I mean, listen, Harrison, for up until fairly recently, told me he was going to just, the day after graduation, pack up his car and, drive out to LA and become an actor. So, because it's that easy. It's just, you just show up.
Does Harrison have a car?
Well, he's only 15.
How's he good?
Well, he's not even 15.
Right, how's he gonna get a car?
By 18, he's already planning on having a car. He'll probably scam his Mimi into getting him one. And she'll do anything. She'll set the world on fire for that kid. I'll be like, no. But it happens. What's amazing though, what's so fabulously reaffirming, and I hope you feel reaffirmed by it as well, is that these are such happy kids. And when you talk about them, you light up. And, I know the activism that you're doing in your hometown, and it's just such a big deal. And I hope that everybody that's listening to this tonight not only got from it that, nice white ladies can be badasses, but also that there are things that they can do in their world to just keep sharing this stuff and perpetuate this growth and this change. And it doesn't, it's never going to be easy to be uncomfortable, but sometimes being right and doing the right thing should be more important than being at ease.
Right.
I think I tell people when they're early on in their journey, I'm coaching a couple of people through this right now, that, white supremacy in America is like this conveyor belt, or like the thing you walk on kind of at the airport, right? And everybody's going one way. And then you wake up and you're like, I'm going to pivot a little bit. I'm going to grab my suitcase and go the other way. And that's when you realize that a lot of relationships that you thought you had, and the belief system and the church and all those things, they were really kind of built on this system that if you choose not to agree with it or challenge it, you don't mean as much to those people anymore.
Yep.
I have never in my life been talked to the way I have been talked to since I started talking openly in my race. Never. By strangers, by former church members, by book club friends, by family members. Mm-hmm. And so when you turn and you pivot and you walk upstream, it is challenging, it's hard, it's costly, you will lose relationships. You aren't in charge of who's coming. I would say that to white people too. Like, I was so attached to who I thought people were that when they told me, I remember one night laying in bed thinking about this friend, I so wanted her to get it. I was so hurt by her words. And my husband said to me, "You think she's smart?" And I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "Do you respect her?" I said, "I do." It's like, "Does she have books?" "Yeah." "Maybe she doesn't want to get it."
Mm.
Maybe she doesn't
Mm.
care enough. And he goes, maybe you care more about her getting it than she cares. And maybe the caring is starting to be like really expensive to you emotionally.
Yes.
Right.
Yep.
And so what I started to look at was like, okay, well, who's listening? And then how, so my whole vision right now, I don't argue with people for forever. I just don't. It's a waste of time. But what I do try to do is to take people who are willing to listen and say, okay, now I want one more thing. Now I want one more. I want you to get right here. Okay, now let's try this. And that's the goal. Because I learned this year, we did some political work around our school district. I learned you don't need that many people to get a policy passed. You just need the right people to show up when you need them to say the thing. You only need like 5%. But you can't get attached to if it's not your grandma because she's not coming. And so,
Peace
okay,
out, me.
I'm
Correct.
still walking this way, but I'm not going to keep walking this way and hitting the same people again and again and again, because that's abuse.
Right. That's abuse.
That's abuse.
Nobody needs that.
No, I do not sign up for optional abuse. I happen to be exposed to enough of it as a human. If I think that we are on a pattern of it, I have a whole other life to live.
Oh
Yeah.
my gosh. Heather, thank you for your time, your effort in life, your wisdom, your words, and you're so gracious about what you say and how you say it. You're not, you didn't go grab a stick and you're like, do this because I said so. But meeting people where they're at.
Yeah.
And thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
This was
Thank you
awesome
so
and
much.
amazing. And thank you for your honesty and your bravery and your vulnerability and joining us on Thought Flow.
So amazing. And thank you to everybody that tuned in tonight. Thank you for being active in the chats. And if you weren't active in the chats, thank you for just sending the good energy, because I know I felt it. It was such a great talk.
Yeah.
Heather brought it. She brought all of the tea in a very nice way, but she would be just as ready to rumble if she needed to, because like she said, no optional abuse. Love it. That's going to be my new hashtag, I think. Thank you.
I can't tell you what a compliment it just takes for me to be invited to this space. I'm sorry that that America does not do better but I want you to know that like I'm here, like we will do this until we get better. But I ache with you for those spaces. And I'm honored to have been able to talk with you. It is my highest compliment when a Black woman thinks that I have something worth saying, because I think it's an incredible amount of trust to even just have a conversation with a white woman for all the damage that we've done. So thank you for taking that risk.
Well, you give us faith. You give us faith. And
Yeah,
I mean,
for
Nikki was about to swear off white women for good. And, I'm out here trying to rescue Rachel Dolezal.
Oh.
It's conversations like this are what I need to stay positive, because it's hard.
It
and
is, yeah.
to know that, these conversations are being had and they will affect the next generation. That's why we're here. We want to leave a better legacy than we inherited. And it starts here. And I'm looking forward to talking to you again. So, be prepared, because you're going to hear from us again. We are looking forward to seeing you again. Thank you for new listeners. Thank you for bringing your friends, not being like, I'm talking to these randos. I don't want you to know about Thank you. Everything about tonight. Thank you. And sorry, I know we said an hour and a half, but it's 5 till 9. So appreciate it. Everybody have a fantastic night and a fantastic weekend. And please Share your thoughts, share your comments, send us messages. We love you all and have a great night.
Good night.
Thank you, everyone.